Good evening, everyone. How you doing tonight? Welcome to the North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project. My name is Tom, and I'm the host of this channel. We have a guest tonight. His name is Jeremiah Fountain. He's a Bigfoot investigator, dog man investigator, does research. He's also partnered with the NADP with Nick Valente. And without further ado, let's bring in our guest. By the way, before I do this, I just want to let everybody know I'm trying to follow the chat as best I can, but I'm not going to be putting all the comments up like I usually do because when I'm working alone, it's really hard to do that and then interview the guest and stay focused on like questions for the guest and just kind of hearing the guest out. So if anyone has questions, just kind of put them in like all capitals or just like type in question with a question mark and I'll put your questions up, but I'm not going to be able to post everyone's comments like I normally do because I'm trying to focus on the guests and kind of give them the full focus of the interview tonight. I feel like I haven't been given the guests, all the focus that they deserve since they're coming on the show, giving me their time. So I want to give it back to them and kind of give them focus and give it to them. So here we go, and here's Jeremiah.
Hey, Tom.
Hey man, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
I appreciate you coming on. You're a great guy. I've heard a lot of good stuff about you.
Appreciate
And
that.
when I heard what you were, I guess you were on the Cryptid Huntress channel a while back. I
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, I'd like to get him on. He's like seems like a great guy. Knows a good bit, and it seems like he's been doing this for a while, and he's the real deal. So I was like, yeah, we
Appreciate it.
kind of had that phone tag back and forth,
Yep.
and then I took the month of December off because my wife had surgery and I was doing, helping her, kind of get back on her feet and, just help
Right.
her recover from that. That being said, I'm just glad to have you on. So
Yeah.
you want
Glad
to
to
do
be here.
a quick little bio on yourself and we'll
Sure.
kind of get started.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up, my family is a logging family. We own lots of land ever since my father was a state trooper. But before that, he grew up
Mm,
working the logging camps as a little kid with my grandfather, my great uncles. Um, I come from Native American descent, Mohawk. So I would listen to tidbits, about these things growing up. Um, and the property we live on now, my wife and I, is one of the 250-acre pieces of land, and we've got about six family between 6 and 8 Sasquatches on the land. Um, they usually leave around November, and they come back around April. And you hear in other parts of the country where you see Dogman and Sasquatch hanging out together, but up here they don't play so nice together.
hmm
Once the Sasquatch leaves, the Dogmen come in.
Yeah.
They're here for the winter time. Um, you know the Sasquatch we have on our property, like we were saying earlier, they don't give us any problems. The only problem I had with them one night was when I interrupted a hunt, and they politely escorted me out of there.
Oh,
And
wow.
I just got that feeling that it was time to leave. They didn't want me in there, and I don't blame them if they
Yeah.
were, So they followed me back to my truck. This is before we were living down there. Um, First sighting down there was in 2000. You know, we've owned this piece of property for 40 years, and I heard my parents talking about these things as well, the weird noises, the weird tree formations.
Mm,
And I started to put things together, after my mother bought me this book called Unexplained Mysteries of the 21st Century. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
I think I've
um,
heard of that.
yeah. So I was flipping through the pages one day. I was about 7, and I got to a beautiful little lady named Patty.
Hmm.
And ever since I took a look at Patty, man, I was enthralled.
Yeah.
I was just enthralled, and yeah, I would, from the youngest age, I can remember hunting down there and, hearing weird things. But at the time, I didn't know what they were, but in 2000, it was muzzleloader season. And I went down to sit for a while to see if I could. There was a nice 10-point buck I was trying to harvest. And he had been elusive for quite a while. And I got in my tree stand, and I hadn't been sitting there long, and something told me that something wasn't right. It was starting to get dusk, and down the logging road, about a mile down the logging road, is where my truck was parked. Now, to get from my tree stand to the logging road, you got to wrap around a big artesian spring. Okay, so I wrapped around that, started walking down the logging road, got couple hundred, about 100 meters from the end, from near the truck. My old man had a skidder, an old time skidder parked, um, right on the side, right in the left hand, would have been right on my left hand side. So
Hey,
as I'm coming,
real quick, what's a? I know what a skidder is, but what's a skidder to those that don't know what a skidder, that don't know about logging?
yeah, a skidder is after you cut down your lumber, the skidder hooks onto it and you drag it out. You put
Okay.
it where you want to put it.
Just so everybody in the chat, if they've never
Yeah,
heard of that before, because not everyone knows some of the terminology. Because I mean, I
true.
I know logging stuff, I know outdoor construction, I know it all. But to
Yeah,
those that never heard of it, that'd be, I just try to just give them a point of view from the guests, so if they know what more, like,
exactly.
understand what a skidder does and all that.
Right, right. No, I got you. So I see a head peek behind the skidder, peek around towards me and look at me, and it had these big round, amberish orange eyes. Now I've been hunting all my life. I can track anything, and I had no clue what this could have been. Now at this time it was getting darker. I flicked my headlamp on. I got a little closer to the skidder. I got parallel to the front of the skidder. At this point, it reached its arm around, which would have been its left arm, and popped its head out again. And this time I could see a hand.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I looking at? In a way, I knew what I was looking at, but in a way, I was in denial. I was just in total denial.
Oh yeah.
And this skidder wasn't a big skidder. It was probably 15 feet long.
Mhm.
Um, There's these two logs laying horizontal to me, about 15 feet apart. One was about 15 feet apart from the nose of the skidder,
Mhm.
and the next one is about 15 feet past that one. And then there was a tree about 15 feet past that one. All of a sudden, this thing launches out, and it's a small one. It's a juvenile, and Tom, it propelled itself when it hit that log. It didn't even lower itself to jump or leap. It propelled itself off the top of its feet, like almost bending its feet, and launched itself to the next log.
Oh wow.
Okay. And then when it hit that log, launched itself to the other, and then launched itself to that tree, went behind the tree. So here I am. I'm just in awe. And at this point, it came back out, and it's doing the classic Sasquatch knob and bob,
Yeah.
and it's just staring at me. Now I just want everyone to know out there, I'm not pro kill. I'm not pro kill at all. And this is a stupid thing because I was young. This is 20 years ago. I wanted to get a better look at it. So I took the muzzleloader off my shoulder and I pointed up at it. And as soon as I went to focus it into my scope, it
Mhm.
covered up like this, went behind the tree, and it was gone.
So
I don't
it knew what the gun was. They
It
know
knew
what
what
the
the,
gun
it
pick
knew
is.
what the gun was. It knew what the gun was.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it picked it. It had an angle picked behind that tree because I couldn't see it. If it ran that perfect angle or if it just dropped down, you know, because I didn't hear anything either.
Right. Now, when you saw this thing in your scope, was it looking, could you tell that it was eyeballing you through the scope? Because I hear that so much
It
when
was
people hop
eyeballing me.
on scope and you could see the eye to eye and he's like staring you down through the scope.
He was staring me down before that too.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I was only probably 40 feet away from him.
That's
You know,
crazy.
and it was nuts. It blew my mind, and I finally realized, that this was for real. We had these things down there, but yeah, he skedaddled, and I don't know if he laid down or if he picked that perfect angle and just ran or just
Mhm.
disappeared. In how good they are at camouflage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they can be 5 feet next to you and you wouldn't even know because they're standing still and they're kind of
Exactly.
like, butted up on a tree. Now I was going to ask you about the hand. When you
Yeah.
saw the hand coming out of the tree, a lot of I haven't never seen one up close like that, but a lot of people say that their hands almost looks like an old black leathery baseball glove mitt, like a catcher's mitt. Is that kind of what kind of like reminded
I,
you of?
I couldn't really tell the color, but I
Okay,
can tell you this much. I saw the thumb, and the thumb was turned inward,
really?
which is very weird. And I'll get back to that later because that comes in play with my second encounter.
Okay.
Um, but this was just incredible. And at that point, I said, I got to get out of here. That
Oh
just didn't sit right with me. And that was from the time that ruined my hunting for about 2 years. I didn't go back down there. 2007, I finally had the conies to go back down there. Um, I wanted to work on my tree stand. It was rifle season at this
yeah.
time. I just wanted to do some where the tree stand was in horrible shape. I wanted to just fix it up, but I carried my 300 Magnum on me. And, I got done fixing the tree stand a little bit early. So I said, what the heck? Might as well try to get up in the tree stand and harvest one. And I heard a beller off in the distance. And that sixth sense again told me it's time to leave. You got to get out of here. So as I get out of the tree stand, I'm walking around that pond, and I get about 30 feet away from this tree, which had never been in the water before, standing about 5 feet off the bank of the trees in a natural artesian spring. And I'm thinking, what is this? What's the tree doing in there? Until she turned her hips and she looked at me. It was a female. I could see the breasts.
Right.
The most impressive part about her was her hip area. That was the most impressive part. Um, the water, and she was a big female because the water came up to about 6 inches below her knees. Okay, and
Okay.
from that water point up, I saw about 7 feet, which probably would have put her about 8 feet.
Oh wow, she was a big girl.
She was a big girl. I would have estimated her at about 600.
Yeah.
Now here's the funky part, which really freaked me out. I had that rifle over my shoulder, and she looked, and I said, "Oh my God!" She just saw the barrel of the rifle, and she
Hmm.
looked back at me and gave me a set of eyes. And I'm not saying she gave me mind speak or anything, but I could tell what she was saying to me. I make a joke about it when I talk on these shows about this encounter. It's like that movie Tombstone. You gonna skin that smoke wagon or stand there and bleed? you know. Uh, but um, I didn't want any problems. Even if I had wanted to give her a crack, I could not have gotten my shoulder. I could not have gotten that rifle off my shoulder quick enough.
Oh, I
She would have
bet.
gotten me. She would have gotten to me. Not a problem.
How far were you from her when you saw her like that? Like when you knew, like you're like, I got to get out of here.
You mean when I was still in the tree stand?
Yeah.
Oh God, about 100 yards. But when I walked up to the pond and
Hmm.
came around that corner, she was standing there about 35, 40 feet away.
Oh, 35, 40 feet. I mean, that's like perfect. You could see all.
Yeah,
You could see the whole shebang. I mean, you could see the full Monty. Like you said, her hips were impressive. I mean, she probably had that typical, like, if you remember the Patty Bill, the way she walks, like her hips kind of jiggle from side to side,
yes.
and her backside, her butt is like the
Yeah,
Dunkadunk. She's like,
Dunkadunk. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. And I got to tell you, from back to front, she had to have been 2.5, 3 feet wide.
Oh wow.
That wasn't the shoulders were huge, but the impressive part was the front to back. That was the impressive part to me. She didn't have a cone head. She had kind of a roundish in between cone head. Kind of mixed between the two. Now here's the really funky part.
Hmm.
I've only heard of one other person experience this in my life, and it was with a dog man. Now, as we're looking at each other after we made our mutual agreement not to harm each other, there was almost like a membrane that came up from the bottom eyelid, and she flickered it at me about 5 times. What that was, I don't know, but it's baffled me for years.
Do you think it's some kind of protective eye lens shield that protects their eyes from like elements or rain or maybe
I
even something coming at them? Like they say these things can charge through like a thicket brush like it's nothing. Well, if you got a protective thing over your eyes and you got thick fur, you can run through like a brush patch or like a thicket patch with thorns in it, and it won't affect any part of you because you got your eyes are covered up like almost like goggles, and your fur is really thick and you get that leathery skin, so it's not going to bother you. So maybe it's a
That's a good point.
protective.
That's a good point. I never heard anyone mention that before. You
Huh.
know, I've heard, I've considered those the, I'll call it a membrane or whatever, but
Mhm.
I've always maybe it helps them see at night. Um, I think it could have many uses
Yeah.
when they're attacking prey. You know, taking down a deer, maybe protecting debris from coming in their eye.
Yeah. Well, here you go. Darkwoods just said it will negate eye shine from a
Yeah,
flashlight, so that makes sense too.
I agree, 100%.
It might have all of the above. I mean, it might just be
Yeah,
an ability they have that they were born with that that these Dogman as well that kind of
exactly.
gives them protection from everything and
Yep,
filters eye shine from flashlights or like high beams of a car hitting instead of being blind cars coming at you with the high beams on at night. These things protect your eyes and they deflect it, so
right.
that makes sense.
Exactly. Exactly. So that was 2007.
Okay.
In 2016, my wife and I moved to North Carolina for a while. Did a lot of research down there and near the Croatan.
What parts, because I'm not too far from Uwharrie State Forest, and that's a really really active spot with squatch.
You are right, safe for us. We were more in Washington County.
So you were like on the coastline area near, right? You were like near the
Exactly.
coastline, so okay.
Exactly. We had a lot of
Croatan
action down there, man.
Croatan is that area where I don't know if you remember, but there was a gentleman on the Travel Channel on one of those fear encounters, and he encountered a dog man with his camper, and he
Yes.
pulled out his 357. I think he shot at it because he was trying to change his tire or something. He was checking
Yes.
his camper, and he actually pulled into a Walmart. He was blown away from this encounter because he'd never heard of these things before, and he's got a 8 foot dog man coming at him, and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, there's a ton of dogman reports in North
That's a
Carolina.
swamp, really high swamp area too. That's by the Great
Swampy.
Dismal Swamp.
Oh yeah,
That's a huge reserve land. So these things can be
huge,
all over that because they're protected, and
huge, huge.
natural preserve protects these things. So
And that's what people when people think in New York State, where I'm from, they think of the city and they think of Albany and Rochester, but they forget the Adirondacks is 6.2 million acres of untouched wilderness. So we've got a ton of action up here, ton of
oh
action.
yeah, yeah.
Dogman, Sasquatch. Um, we were my wife and I were coming back from my sister's one night, and this was about the time. This was turning November, and we were still working on our cabin, but we were living in a camper. And I said it was about midnight. I said, "Stacy, you're gonna hit that guy in the side of the road." She she says, "What guy?" I said, "That guy right there." And she slams on the brakes. And she noticed it too, and there it's standing against a tree with a real smug, arrogant look on its face. It took one look at us, it took off on all twos, took two leaps on all twos, hit all fours, and then went into our side of the property because on the other side of the road is another person's property. And I always had the feeling never to go in there, never to go in there.
Hmm.
And what's weird is, I've talked about this before on other shows. I don't know if you ever heard me talk about it, but 2 days before that, my wife had an encounter with what we believe is the alpha male of the Sasquatch group. She went for a 4-wheeler ride. She's braver than I am. I'll tell you what. She went for a 4-wheeler ride, came back, and she said, "You'll never guess what I just saw." I said, "Well, tell me about it and show me where it is." So we drove down to the spot.
Mm-hmm.
I parked, and she said, "Right there." He turned, he looked at me, and then he walked under that limb right there. And I had her hold the tape measure on the bottom of the ground, and I brought the tape measure up to the bottom of the limb, and that measured at 10'6". He cleared it by about 2 to 3 inches. She said
Oh, damn. So he was an alpha. He was an alpha
he
size.
was an alpha, but
Yeah.
here's the thing: that was 2 nights before this dog man came on our property. Now that night that dog man came on our property, we heard a slam against the camper, shook the camper.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I don't know if this Sasquatch was giving him an education saying it's not time for you to move in yet. We're not gone yet. Not time for you to get in. Just a theory, you know, just a theory. I've heard stories about them getting into it before, and I walked out the next day and it looked like Hiroshima had run off. There was no visible tracks, just scuff marks, trees
Mm.
knocked down,
Yeah.
branches knocked down.
It's almost
It,
like a round. I've seen areas that looks like almost like a rounded arena of trees just plummeled down, and it's usually in a big like 10 foot round to 20 foot round circle almost circumference.
yes,
I've seen just every tree is just pummeled over, like something just
yeah,
hit every single tree, with its back or with grabbed something and swung it, and it's crazy looking.
it is, and after that, this really freaked me out. I went for a ride on the four wheeler, and there was a tree, okay, tree in front of the logging road, and I didn't think nothing of it, okay, because it was the first one. I went around it, went about another 100 meters. There's another one down, and I said, okay, something's going on here. Something weird's going on. So I went around that tree again, around the second tree, got to the third one, about 100 meters down, and I said, oh boy, something's going on. So I got my camera out and I started taking, like you said earlier, started taking pictures of the wood line
Mm-hmm.
to see if I could catch anything. And I immediately sent it to one of my research partners, and he said, Jeremiah, get the hell out of there now. Go back to the camper and research that photo. So I went back, and in between a pine tree, you can see a canid head. And it almost looked like a Gugway type deal with the baboon.
Mm-hmm.
It almost looked like a baboon type.
Yeah.
But that was the last I had ever seen of that thing. Thank God. But it was just sitting there, Tom, staring at me, watching me. And that's what really, really gave me the willies.
Oh, I bet you probably had the hair on the back of your neck standing up, and
You
you
did,
goosebumps galore. You probably had a little, little primal fear going through your body, and
without a doubt.
that's one thing that I haven't encountered, face to face. I've had something, audio wise, like when I was in Canada, we had something that was sounded like you know guttural, growly like a wolf, but we didn't think it was a dog because where we were at, the person didn't mention any dogs being there, so we had something that was kind of throwing its sound to where we were, and it sounded like
Yes.
it was kind of in the woods, but we heard it by a door next to a pool that we're at, and I mean, it was one of them feelings. We just kind of, we kind of just slowly stepped back
Yeah.
and got in the car and drove the hell out of there, and then didn't go back there. So
Absolutely.
you get that primal fear. You don't want to mess around. You kind of
You,
just follow your gut, and you listen to your gut when you come across something like that.
you got to follow your gut. And you made a good point. I think you mentioned them throwing their voices.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I believe they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Project their voices to where they want.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that for you. Excuse me. I believe that for years.
Well, they say these things have extra lung capacity. That's why they can.
Yes.
That's when you hear these recordings, these audio recordings, these growls or howls or whoops. I mean, it's beyond any human's fathom. That their body can project. These things are like, three times the amount as lung capacity that we have. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't doubt that they can throw their voice around or almost kind of bend sound almost and change it up. So they
Oh,
have that
absolutely.
ability. They have a supernatural ability where it can do these things. I truly believe that.
Oh, I do too. I do too. I 10 years ago, you would have never heard me, admitting this kind of stuff. I was more in
Yeah.
the ape camp,
Uh
but
huh.
I've experienced so much weird stuff in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
The past 10 years has totally turned me to the other side. All this stuff has to be connected,
Oh
in
yeah,
my
it's
opinion.
connected. I mean, an animal doesn't take your trail camera and fry your trail camera. An animal
Exactly.
doesn't, your night vision monocular goggles doesn't, when you're done using them, looking, and you're actually seeing a squatch at night. At least my wife was using them. She saw a squatch at night with my monocular goggles. The next day, they wouldn't turn on. They were just the screen would block out white, and it wouldn't work at all. And
Yeah.
we both deemed that it was probably fried by the squatch because she saw it, face
Yeah.
to face encounter, and it probably zapped it with its whatever ability it has to do that. I mean, I don't think it was infrasound, because if we got hit with infrasound, we both would have been sick that night.
Yeah, which I have been. I've been hit hard with infrasound. We were at a place called Mountain View, New York, and it's very very active area, a lot of sightings. And we got there and we split up. We had guys about 100 parts, 100 yards apart in rows, and I had my infrared, and I was scoping the area, and I heard crackling, like hard crackling, trees breaking and stuff. And my buddy starts yelling to me, the one that was the closest one to me, and I said, "What?" He goes, "You got to get over here and check this out." And there's still a lot of pine straw on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
Just as I get over there, we see the impression of a 9 foot print, and it disappears right in front of our face. This thing got in between us without either one of us knowing
Oh wow. We got a quick question from Steve Riley, but you weren't a trooper. Your dad was a trooper, right?
it. That's correct.
Now he wants to know if there were any code words used. If you know of any code words they use, like black cow or black dog or anything like that, because that's kind of one of the I wouldn't even say rumors, but there's a lot of going around like code words being used with law enforcement to kind of accommodate and acknowledge these things where there's like either an counter attack or
Yeah.
something a road sighting. Have you ever heard anything like that? Or
I
you think
haven't heard
that?
anything that from Dad, but what I have heard from Dad, you might find this interesting. Yeah, you follow 411 at all?
Yeah, I just got done watching the UFO connection, which is crazy.
Oh, I bet. Do you know of the Douglas Leg case that went missing? The kid that went missing in the Adirondacks back in the 70s.
Okay.
Dad was on that case.
Wow, your dad was on that case.
He was on that case. Yeah, yeah, and it still bothers him to this day because they
Oh,
never.
I bet. I mean, a lot of people that bothers. I mean, these people go missing, and whether they're recovered or not. The weirdest thing is when these people are recovered, their body always turns up where the area that's been searched 3 times already and combed thoroughly, and their body winds up being, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
My internet's crapping out. Sorry,
It's all right. No,
I
no,
have
you're
to
good.
change over to my other computer. But yeah, even Darkwood says the dog man he's had contact with gave him no fear or dread, puts him on high alert, and 2 feet away from him. Yeah, that's got to be you know still got to be
That's
freaky.
close.
Still got to be freaky when you're 2 feet from these things. And the weirdest thing is you can be 2 feet from them and not even know it. That's how they can.
That's how well they camouflage themselves. Yeah, that which brings me to my another story. I was down in the land, and I was walking back to the spring. This was just a joy walk. I was by myself. Don't do as I say, not what I do. Never go by yourself. So, I did. I was armed, and I look about 100 yards into the woods, into the wood line, and I see a very canid looking creature with its arms wrapped around a dog, or not a dog, a deer or a coyote or something. And I was able to get a picture of it. I can send you that picture if you want.
Oh, sure, I'd love it. I won't.
Yeah.
I won't post it nowhere. You got my
Okay.
word. I'll
It,
keep it to
it,
myself.
it's very interesting. I've got one I blew up, and I've got the original. I'll send you as well. But it's very compelling because it didn't, like Dark Waters was saying, it gave me, at the time, it gave me no feeling of dread. I was just glad I had that deer and not me
Mhm.
wrapped around its arms.
Yeah, that brings me to another thing that you mentioned. That if you've ever seen the picture of the Beast of Seven Shoots, it looks like a snub nose, like a like a little pug nosed dog man,
Yeah.
almost like baboon nose like.
Yep.
And when you zoom in on a picture, it looks like it's holding a dog in like a white lab or something in its
White
arms.
lab, something like
People
that.
say it's a sheep. It's something. I mean, I really can't really tell you what it is, but it's definitely holding something in its
It's
arm.
holding prey.
You can
Yeah.
definitely see it's whatever it's holding is a different color than what it is,
Yeah.
and it's got little little size, so like it's like a large like a lab dog or something of that manner.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So
I
that's
mean,
kind of what you saw.
yeah, yeah.
Similar.
It had its arms wrapped right around it, but the thing was like slanting off the front end of its body, and its whole body was faced towards me, and it had it like this.
Wow.
And you can see the hands, you see both hands, you can see the snout, you can
And you
see
saw
the
its
ears,
eyes.
you can see its eyes, you can see its ears.
Now, were the ears like pointed like a German Shepherd, or were they more like a Doberman or like a
Nope,
Mastiff?
like
What
a
did
German Shepherd.
German Shepherd? Okay,
Yep.
that's like the majority is German Shepherd. You get some like some people say it's like a you get a little bit say it has a Doberman Pinscher look to it. Some say
Yeah.
it has like almost like Mastiff, those really tuffet ears. Now, do you
Yeah.
remember there being like hair tuffets on the back, like how a Bobcat or Lynx is, or no?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
would have been too far away to even with the
Yeah.
camera. If I was to blow it up anymore, I'd probably ruin it. You know, which brings me, I caught a case a while back of these two, a girl who is an iron worker. She always wanted to remain anonymous, and I've been having a heck of a time trying to give me this report. But I talked to him a little bit about it, and her partner is a female conservation officer on the reservation.
Hmm.
Well, they were going through a town called Bombay one night, and what's weird, all the dogman reports I've gotten up here, they don't have haunches like a dog.
Hmm.
Okay, from the reports I've taken, from what I've seen, they have legs like us and like Sasquatches, which is very. When I told Nick that, he found that. No, I didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't smell anything.
Okay.
Um, Nick was in awe. He wrote that right down. But anyway, they were coming back from work, and they were going down a back road in Bombay, and same deal. One was against a tree, and she said the same thing I said to my wife: "Slow down, you're going to hit that guy."
Hmm.
But this one stepped nice and slow into the road, turned, stared at them for probably 30 seconds. That had blood dripping from its mouth, blood all over its snout, saliva leaking from its mouth, and
Damn.
then it turned. It took off on two legs.
It was probably got done eating a meal out, and it probably was tearing up a rabbit or a deer or
Exactly,
whatever it was chomping on. Probably just got done finishing. It was covered in blood, and it
covered in blood.
could just be a chance encounter. Crossing the road and car
Yep,
coming.
yep. You
Wow.
know what's interesting up here too is you hear a lot of people talk about the matted hair. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
down south. I've never encountered that up here. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's because of the winter time and they shed a new coat. I don't know. I guess it's a possibility.
Jay, we got a question from Darkwood.
Yeah, never.
Okay.
No, never.
Wow. Now you do work. You do like kind of correspond back and forth with Nick Valente on the NADP, right? You're kind of like partnered up with him now.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
That's pretty wild. So I
yeah.
mean, you two got to get out. Have you done any excursions with him yet, or no? Because I know he's good.
We actually have a couple planned for this year. We're gonna go to LBL, and we're gonna go down to the conference in Arkansas. I
Okay.
think it's the 10th, and we're gonna hit that too.
The 10th of what month? Because I froze up.
I think our 10th of October in Arkansas, or maybe it's the first, something around there.
Now, is it
We'll
going to be
be,
like a formal outing, or is it just going to be like a private outing?
that's a conference, but
Okay.
we're gonna do an outing too. And then uh, Nick, Wayne Tothrow, and I, a few other guys, and we want to make it. We want to get as many people together as possible to go to the LVL.
Now, I'd love to go to that.
That'd be great.
Shoot.
That'd be great. Yep.
round up the
That's my
gear, get out, get the thermal out, just put my
absolutely.
protection stuff on just to keep, from, because I don't use protection, the gunpowder protection for these cryptids. I use it. You gotta think about all the other stuff that's in the woods that
Yes.
come at you,
Yeah.
that no one thinks about. That you want to be protected against because these things, these just natural predators come at you. You don't
Oh
want
my
to be
god.
stuck with nothing to protect yourself with, even if it's a can of bear spray, like Nick said, bear spray. I think
Yep.
Nick said bear spray is one good thing to protect yourself. Another good thing is flashbangs if you can afford them.
Yep.
The other
Flashbangs.
one is the high loud this little the high decibel squeal bombs
Yep.
that
Yep.
go crazy. The little like alarm sounds, and you also have the lights, the flashing lights that get really light because
Flashbang.
if
Yeah.
you can't see, like I said, if you can't see something, you can't go after it. So you throw them lights out. They're like a couple thousand lumens.
Yep.
They're like pure daylight at night. They're gonna
Oh
blind
yeah.
any
Yeah. Without a doubt. The nervous, the most nervous I get is when I see big bull moose tracks.
bull
They're,
moose.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm living in the south, so I only saw a moose face to face when I was in Canada. When I told you about my Canadian encounter
Yep.
before, we were coming out of a one of the trails we were baiting one night. I think it was like the first or second night we were there. He took us out to do some baiting, and when you bait bear, I mean, people don't realize it, but you got a whole 5 gallon pail of just intestines, pig parts. I mean, it
Yeah. You
smells.
name it.
When you take the cap off, it smells horrible. But
Yeah.
bear to bear, that's like sweets. That's like that's like a candy shop opening right there.
Filet mignon, man.
Yeah, filet. I mean, it's perfect. But we came out of one of the baiting spots, and it was like an old logging road. And all of a sudden, a big moose runs up next to the suburban as we're driving down the logging road, and this thing's head, the antlers are above the roof of the top
Oh
of the roof.
sure.
And I mean, I was blown away on how big that moose was.
Oh, they're massive. They're massive. Even a cow moose, to be honest, make me more nervous than the bulls. Because if they're with a calf, a cow moose will trample you to death.
I'm
And
just wondering about a moose and a Sasquatch or a dogman. I mean, obviously they're going to win, but I bet you the moose will give a good fight if it's a bull moose.
I got a story about that. If you want to hear it,
Yeah, I'd love to.
we interviewed a gentleman, Gary Spikes Jr. and I. This is about 3 years ago. I'm not going to say the gentleman's name on the air, but you can check it out on my YouTube channel and listen to the whole thing. But he was out hunting moose. He had a 308. As he walked out in the open, this moose came charging towards him and went by him. And then all of a sudden, he said about 20 feet in the air, jumps this big black creature, jumps on the moose's back, goes out in front of him, grabs his antlers, and starts tangling with him. And he said they went at it for about 10 minutes. So this moose gave him everything he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big animal, a moose. It gave him everything he wanted. But he said the way finally the Sasquatch got him on the ground, and the way he broke this thing's neck was kind of disturbing because he went around to the antlers and he picked the antlers up and went. And
Oh
the
wow.
gentleman said you could see the whole spinal cord
Oh gosh.
rumble. And he didn't pay any mind to the witness. He went to work on getting it out immediately.
Wow. What's weird when you're mentioning that? Al Santoriga, right?
Absolutely.
The Godfather, the Squatch Father, Al Santoriga. Well, he told a story, and well, I wouldn't even call it. It's not a story. This is an experience he experienced when he was a young guy in Florida at his uncle's house. I think this was like Davie County or something. It's not too far from like Miami and Orlando. So he noticed a rancher. That one night that it was like I think it's a couple weeks time over in the summer because there was a bunch of wildfires and this squatch was he said it was every bit of 10 feet and over 1,500 pounds easily. He said it was so big he called it King Kong.
Yeah.
So he bottom of the line of the story. I don't want to get into too much because this is your interview, but the thing is this squatch went into the rancher and took his prized Brahma bull
Oh
and
man.
ripped its head off.
Oh
And you
my
know,
god.
a Brahma bull's got to weigh at least 2,000 pounds
At
easily.
least.
Those things are solid. I mean, they're solid muscle. A
Oh
bull,
yeah.
a Brahma bull.
Yep.
They're meant for one thing and one thing only, for bullfighting and whatever else, and their horns.
Absolutely.
So if that thing can rip the head off of a bull that big, and imagine what it could have done to a moose.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, like I said, it went on. He said it went on about 10 minutes, and then the moose got tired out, and that's when the Sasquatch took advantage. But
Wow.
you figure he would have twisted his neck, but
Hmm.
the way he did it, he got up out in front of it, lifted the antlers, and popped. And he said he could see the whole spinal cord.
Wow, that's
Just
pretty
one.
wild. I mean,
Yeah,
it's incredible that you just to see that happening like that, because when you take that part of the brain, it takes the focus off the body. Everything's just going to kind of limber to nothing when you mess with the spinal cord and the skull.
absolutely.
It's all connected, especially
It's all
on
connected.
something like a deer or a moose. The way their body is different than ours. They're on their legs and their back is up. So when you mess with that and pull that out, the whole spine is out of whack.
Out of
I
whack.
can imagine seeing that. That's got to be a sight beyond
A
beyond
sight to
imagination.
see. A
Yeah.
sight to see. Yeah.
Wow. Well, speaking of sights beyond imagination to see, I know we talked about this earlier. You have a
Yeah.
story that your father kind of can, and
Yeah.
that, I mean, I heard this and I was like, it blew my mind away. So let's get into that, because this is pretty cool. This is a wild. I mean, this is this
Sure.
is crazy.
Um, I'm gonna call the guy Mr. Clark.
Okay.
Um, my father knows him, but I heard the story. My father had already known about the story, never told me about it until I was older. I got told by a gentleman I know that was in foster care with this family. Now, this guy was a Vietnam vet, tough, rough Adirondack man, not scared of anything. Long blonde hair, long blonde beard, ex special forces in Vietnam. And he grew up in the Adirondack Mountains for a week at a time. And when he got back, he said the whole time he was up there, he felt like he was being tracked. And a guy like that is going to know when he's being tracked.
Oh yeah, Vietnam vet. He knows. You can definitely tell when something's watching you and something's stalking you, because he has that experience from being. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. And
Yep, I heard that.
oh yeah, I've heard stuff like that too.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Yep.
Bobcats
Yep.
killing deer, yeah.
Links too. Yep.
Lynx, bobcats, yeah, all them little.
Yep.
They can do it. I mean, they got the strength and agility
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
the jaw powers in there. I mean, I haven't told you real quick. I raised a bobcat. Me and my brother back before we went to Canada. Um, we bought a black market bobcat.
Oh, cool.
Back when you had to go to the airport and pick it up in like a secret hangar because it was like an
Right.
exotic animal.
Yeah.
And we raised this bobcat for like almost maybe 6 months before it got too wild, and we had to take it to some sanctuary in Pennsylvania. But this bobcat could jump. If you held a piece of chicken as high as you could with your hand, it can jump and catch that piece of chicken in your hand.
Wow.
Um, and I had a 110-pound Rottweiler, and this thing was probably the size of a house cat at the time we had it. Basically the size of a house cat, and it would go crazy to go after my Rottweiler, and it hated the Rottweiler. I mean,
Hated it.
it wanted to kill my Rottweiler, but needless to say, we after about 6 months we got rid of this bobcat, and I actually have pictures of the bobcat. If I could find them, I'll send you one. But I have a picture of a
Cool.
bobcat jumping in the air, someone holding a piece of chicken. It's wild.
That's awesome.
But
That's
go on
awesome.
with your story, man.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
mean to
Yeah.
hold you up.
Not a problem. I was told by this. The story was told to me by a foster kid that was there living with him at the time. When he came back, he felt like he had been tracked. One night, he had made his fire, and he heard something behind a tree about 100 feet away. And finally, this thing stuck its head out, and he couldn't really tell what was going on. But It started on all fours, then got up to 2 feet, and he had remember the old Remington 36 were they the 2600 or the 3600 semi-automatics? They made them in a 30-06 and a 270.
It wasn't a third bolt action?
No, it was one of them was a pump, one of them was a bolt action
Okay, I know.
or
I
a
remember the
semi.
pump one. Yeah, I remember the pumps.
Yeah, the pumps. He unloaded 6 shots into this thing before he brought it down.
Damn, six
Six
shots.
6 shots before he brought it down. Now it took him about 3 days to drag this thing out of the mountains. He had an old C10 79 C10 pickup truck.
Mhm.
They loaded it in the back, and as the truck's coming down the road going to go home, everyone turns and looks, and there's this beast in the back cab, and it was so big it had to hang over the front end of the windshield. Had hands like us except claws, had
Right.
canines, had a beak like a horse. Now here's the really weird part. It
Like a
had
horse?
eyes like a horse, but
Wow.
it had canines. Now the weird part about it is the eyes were on the side of the head, but they looked just like human eyes.
Wow.
The color of this thing was that of a blue pit bull.
What color was it?
Like a blue pit bull, a brindle blue pit
Oh
bull.
yeah, that brindle blue kind of like
Yep,
that dark gray color almost, but
yep,
spotted.
yep, exactly. So they got it lifted onto a lift and they brought it down to this guy, Mr. Ashley, who was the butcher at the time,
Mm.
and they had the old hook scales.
Yeah.
And I think this one went up to 1,500 pounds. And when they threw it on, it wrapped around the 1,500 all the way up to back to the 7. So this thing was almost 2,000 pounds.
Damn.
So when they got it back on the ground, and there was dogs all over the place. And the dogs didn't want anything to do with it. Usually, and that's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Usually when you bring like a something when you harvest something, usually 9 times out of 10 the dog is going to start chewing on it, gnawing on it,
Exactly,
getting blood or whatever. The dogs go crazy over something like that.
crazy,
It's normal. It's in their instinct.
insane, and they didn't want anything to do with it. Now the weird thing is, the guy that told me this thing was the skin was like glazed, almost like it was sickly. Okay,
Right.
and they were taking sticks and they were
Mhm.
poking it in the side of the hips and the belly, and the sticks were going right through. So this thing was sick. So his wife told him, "Listen, why don't you call the DEC, just in
Mhm.
case this is something that needs to be reported?" But rumor has it, from what my father's told me, he has a claw he cut off,
Right.
and he had a Polaroid. He took a Polaroid picture, and to this day, as far as I know, he still got them. I've been wanting to go down there, but out of respect for my dad,
Wow.
I haven't done it yet. I
Bama.
someday I'm gonna, but not right
Yeah,
now.
you definitely like to find more about that. But Bama said, "Horsehead dog man, I have a blurry picture of one of my. Send me that picture, Bama. You know how to get in
Yeah,
touch with me on Facebook Messenger, whatever. I'd love to see that picture because I mean, this is
me
a.
too.
It's weird that you mentioned and it has like a horse face, and now she's saying, Bama, horsehead dog man. I mean, that's
And the weird thing about this, Tom, is that you're not gonna believe this part, but it had on its feet,
hoofs.
hoofs on its legs,
Wow,
and they weren't like a horse's hoof. They were like a triped hoof.
really?
Yeah, which to
Like a
me seemed
like a goat?
anthropologically impossible to
Yeah.
run on 2 legs,
Well,
but they did it.
that's
We've
crazy.
seen we've
That's
seen weirder
crazy.
things from other creatures.
Well, I was thinking it was, maybe that upstate New York, they got that not too far. I mean, obviously it's on the other part, but maybe it might have came from Plum Island, the
That's what I
research
was thinking,
facility.
because when these people showed up, DC wasn't there within minutes. Okay, and one of them got out and he was dressed in a suit. They
Mhm.
almost feel like he was the scientist. The other two guys were in DEC uniform, and they had a flatbed, so
Mhm.
they knew they were going to drag something out.
Yeah.
So Mr. Clark says to the scientist, "What is this thing?" He goes, "Mr. Clark, I'm going to put it this way: it's not something that's supposed to be living out here right now." Well, what does that tell us?
Yeah.
Where
That's
is it
pretty,
supposed to be? Where is it supposed to be living? You got it
yeah.
locked up somewhere, doing genetic experiments on it or something?
I mean, there's stories of these blacked out unmarked trains that go across the country every now and then, and people have some people that were whistleblowers were able to speak out where these things have chains on the top, chains on
Yeah,
the bottom, and it's solid steel around where nothing can break through. It's like, what are they putting in these trains hauling across the country
exactly,
from side to side, and what the hell is like who's brave enough to man these trains and drive these trains, but whatever the hell's in them, that's
exactly.
the $1 million question.
And what makes me wonder if it seems like this thing was sick, the way they were poking the sticks through the
Hmm.
side.
Yeah.
What if he had taken 6 shots at that thing and it was in full, you know,
Oh
prime?
yeah.
You know,
Well, prime, just like they say, a bear. Even like you shot deer. When that adrenaline goes off, you shoot a deer. They can run for almost a mile
a
after you
mile.
shoot them, and
Yeah,
that's a heart shot. Once that adrenaline kicks in, I mean, they can go forever.
and forever.
They can keep going. So imagine something that size
Oh my
when it's
god.
got its full, strength capacity of being healthy. Like you said, it was probably sickly and it probably died easily. I mean, in 6 shots, a 30-06 is about 4 inches across,
Yeah,
and maybe about almost a little smaller than a dime in diameter of the back part of the bullet, and then the front tip of it's almost like the tip of a pencil. So
yeah. This was the 270 version.
270. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but
still,
still,
it's
still
close to it. I mean, my
close.
weapon of choice is 308. With the high capacity rounds. High feet per second capacity rounds. That's my gun of choice. I mean,
That's
I've shot
clear.
7 mag, shot the 300 Win. My new rifle, I actually purchased last year, was an AR-12.
Nice,
It holds 10 rounds, and the magazine looks like a AK-47.
nice.
And I bought these defense rounds. They're called Lights Out,
Yeah.
and it costs $50 for 5 12 gauge shells. But these things are meant when they come out, they're meant to come out as 12 gauge like a slug. But
Yeah,
when it hits impact, it blows up to the size of like a softball.
it's softball. Yeah.
So
That's the
whatever it
damage that
is,
would do. Wow.
doing damage.
Good God.
By the original poster, MO of having a creature. Let's see what Bigfoot Truth is saying. I'm trying to read this. MO of having a creature, releasing it, track it. Yeah, I mean they could have
Yeah.
released it and tracked it because you said
Exactly.
they came out there pretty fast.
They got
So,
there real quick.
and there's a lot of accounts of. I mean, I've heard so many accounts of these things. Uh, a dog man came out to disturb I think this was on Dogman Encounters years ago, but I think there was like a little Latino party and in some park, and one of the guys was trying to alert the people because this thing was coming out of the woods, and these people at the party are hitting a piano. This thing's coming at them, and they finally acknowledge it and they get out of there, and then not even 5 minutes later, there's a weird marked car coming down the road, and it's got one of those big parabolic bowl dishes on it, and it's like veering this thing back off to go into the woods, and it's running away because
Yeah.
it's using this like sound machine from a parabolic you know
Right.
bowl disc.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, it's crazy.
It is.
These
It
stories of
is.
feds right on top of these creatures. Yeah, oh, they are following there's a creature in Holland. It's amazing the things you can find if you just do a little digging, and you can
Do a
come up
little
with
digging.
so much.
Spend boots on the ground, do your research, and follow your data.
Oh yeah, Lakewood Lichen video. I'll have to check that out. Bigfoot Truth, definitely. Let's see. Bible, yeah. I mean, even it all goes back to the Bible. If you think about it, you read some stuff in the Bible. It talks about the beasts of the earth,
Yeah.
the days of Noah, and what the way we're living these days. I mean, we're pretty much living in the days of Noah. We're pretty much playing God.
Yeah.
We're creating things called chimeras. We're altering DNA. They're talking about bringing back the woolly mammoth. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you follow Israeli News Live, but there's a lot of controversy, but because he did a recent video talking about government super soldiers that there were certain factions of the government are trying to request funding to stop these things from
Oh my
being
God.
made in underground facilities, and he talks about some of these attacks from these dogman creatures in like Tennessee. And what do you know? What happened last year? All these people were getting killed by these dogmen in
Yeah,
East Tennessee.
exactly.
So it kind of
Exactly.
puts two and two together and it correlates both stories.
It
So I
does.
mean, maybe a lot of these things aren't so far fetched.
No, not at all.
The
Not at all.
I always go by the X Files. Like, the truth is out there. Like Fox Mulder always said.
It is out there. We just got to find
Yeah.
it.
I mean, you see these movies these days. I mean, people post movie. They put these little bit of they call it disclosure. These little bits of disclosure through movies.
Yep.
You
Yep.
remember? You remember They Live, the movie They Live?
I didn't
Roddy
see that
Roddy
one.
Piper.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, that's a really good movie. You should really watch it. It's Roddy Piper and another guy, and they wear these glasses, and every time they put the glasses on, they can see what's really
Oh,
going on in the world around them, and they're
okay. Okay. I've heard of it. I've
things are
heard
like
of it.
aliens. Well, those glasses are actually called Diclanian glasses. Let me look.
Yeah.
There's an actually doctor that created these glasses, like back in the 1900s. Dr. Walter Kilner, right?
Yeah.
And he created these glasses, Dysanian aura goggles.
Okay.
Well, that movie was pretty much a documentary based on his goggles that he created. You actually put these goggles on, you could see people's auras if they're like have demonic or they have good aura or bad aura. So that was, I mean, it's crazy what they put in movies.
Oh, it is. It is.
But that
Absolutely is.
that story is awesome. That you well, I mean, I wouldn't call it even the story. That's an encounter, that
Yeah.
experience that your dad. I would love to see what this thing looked like. I mean, that's got to be.
Jess drew a picture of it. Maybe I can get a copy of it from her and send it to you.
Yeah, and I remember that truck. That was an 8 foot back then. Truck beds were only 8 foot long, so that
Eight
thing
foot.
was. If it hang out of the bed still with its full, it was bigger than 8 foot tall,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it came out on all fours, and then it ran on two. So that tells you something that this is
Yeah.
was bipedal, but it ran on fours as
It
well.
ran
So
in fours as well. Exactly.
that's wild, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
J.C. Johnson was a good researcher. Jack Carey, do you know Jack Carey?
You know Jack. Yep.
I'm good friends with Jack from Paranormal Intelligence
Yep.
Agency. He was actually did a lot of research with J.C. Johnson when he was alive. Before he,
Okay.
yeah, Jack knows a lot. He does a lot about the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, he knows the stuff.
He does a lot of discussion about the. Have you ever heard the hitchhiker effect? That's like a new thing that's kind of
Yes.
really making waves now, because
Yeah.
what happens, you have an encounter somewhere, say you have it across the country, you come home, this stuff starts following you home, and you start having the same encounters at home. So that makes all due to paranormal activity, how everything's
Oh
kind of.
yeah.
I mean, it's all paranormal one way or another. That's the way I see it.
Right. And the more I experience, the more I realize all this
Yeah.
stuff's related.
It is all related. Just like Darkwood says, Christ is coming, the days of Noah. I
Yeah.
mean, we're living in, and I mean, every time you turn around, there's wars, rumors of wars, pestilence. They're trying to starve us out. They're
Yeah.
trying to, this new talk of gas stoves being extinct. Well, I mean, they're
Yeah.
just not building houses with gas stoves. If you got a gas stove, they're not coming for your stove.
No.
you know,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's crazy, but we're living in the days we're living in. It's never been like this ever before. I mean,
Nope.
we're just living in crazy times, and I just pray that my kids can don't have to deal with the days of reckoning.
Same here, Tom. Same here.
The sad world we live in. Just
It
pray to
is,
God
buddy.
that we can all be saved and live in peace.
Yep. Exactly.
But dude, I appreciate you coming on. Sorry for my ramble. I just haven't. I
No,
really,
man, I
I
enjoyed
really,
it.
I really enjoyed your interview. I think we
Yeah.
could probably go for another hour easily, no problem.
Yeah. Anytime you want me back on, just let me know, man.
Yeah, and I know you were saying about me doing something with you or Nick or whatever.
Absolutely. I'll have you on the show. We'll work out a time.
just reach out to me whenever you guys need me, and
Will
I
do.
definitely like to try to come out to Land Between the Lakes if that's in my schedule if I could fit it in.
Okay.
I mean, it's only about I wouldn't say only it's a 10-hour ride, so that's like going to New Jersey from because I've traveled to New Jersey so much back and forth to my old home state, so that's like a 10-hour ride.
Yeah, it's quite a ride for me too. I'd have to. I'm going to meet Nick in Virginia or New Jersey, which is 6 hours from me, and then we're going to cruise to LBL.
Wow,
So it's quite
nice.
a ride, but it's worth it.
You're gonna drive in the tactical wagon, huh, with Nick?
The tack wagon. That's right.
Yeah, nice. I'm sure he's going to be all geared up for that.
Oh yeah, so will I.
Well, if anyone needs, if anyone wants to like reach out to you or gets like, we want to do a quick like plug on what you do,
Yep.
we'll
Yeah.
go for it.
Anyone, you reach me, any questions, any reports you want to file, you can reach me on onthetrail.jf, .jf at gmail.com. My Facebook page, On the Trail in Search of Living Legends, or excuse me, on the Trail, paranormal cryptid research, and our YouTube channel, Paranormal and Cryptid Crossroads, or you can get me on Messenger. And I'd like to give a shout out to my partner Nick and all the other guys on the Roundtable Show. And yeah, you can reach me anytime. Don't feel afraid to get a hold of me if you have any questions or want to report something. You're
Absolutely.
not you're not gonna get a closed mind from me.
No, you got to be open minded in this day and age. I
Yep.
mean, the stuff that's going on. I mean, you just kind of like, yeah, all right. What else? Anything else happen?
Exactly.
Any other weird stuff going on with that? I mean, you can't be closed minded because there's so much of this going on. It's crazy. I mean, it just seems like in the last couple of years, encounters and sightings have increased so much.
It's
The
crazy.
veil's being lifted so much. It's
Big
incredible.
time. Big time.
It almost makes you wonder about that whole Agenda 2030 thing where they're trying to get people out of out of areas like in the wooded areas and try to get them into like suburban city areas, and they're
Yeah.
going to use these creatures that they're building in labs to drive people out of the
Yep.
wooded areas into the city so they can be controlled.
Yep. Yep.
I
Makes you wonder.
mean, anything's possible. I mean, what's weirder, a 8 foot tall, wolf-like being on two legs, or 9 foot tall, you know, man, beast, Sasquatch. It's all strange. So, what else could
Yeah.
possibly be any weirder?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, all right. I see that the glasses. Well, everybody in the chat, thank you so much. Moderators, thanks for all your work you done tonight, and there's everyone. I thank you again, Jeremiah. I appreciate you doing this
My
tonight.
pleasure, man.
I'd love to do it again, and thanks again, everybody.
Absolutely.
Great night. You could just drop out of the
Okay, buddy.
we're finished. So
Have a good night, Tom.
take
Thanks,
care, guys.
everybody.
Bye. Good night. Good night, everybody, and thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate you all, and have a great week. I'll do the end.